Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Yes, we do. We have Thomas Frank, fantastic author. He's got a new book out called The People, Know that I've been reading. Really excited to talk to him. Also, Dan Marins is on some major updates in Alex Morse. He's, of course, running against Richie Neal in that contested primary. There were allegations of some sort of impropriety, always very vague. Now it looks like that was all a smear campaign organized from the beginning, according to new reporting. So we're going to get Dan to dig into all of that. I know we're also surprised here. Yeah. But we wanted to start with the state of the race, the presidential race, as Joe Biden, of course, picks Kamala Harris as his VP.
Yeah, that's right. And not necessarily encouraging for the Biden campaign. Let's throw Nate Silver's 538 analysis up there. Biden is favored to win the election 72 in 100 times to Trump's 28 in 100 times. Now, you may say, hey, those are pretty good odds. And that's exactly what Hillary Clinton said on election night in 2016, because those are the exact same odds that Hillary had on election night in 2016, which Nate Silver pointed out to us. And you have to look at the analysis within that respect, which is, 1/3 out of times Trump wins the election here, which is not... If you looked at electoral analysis, like as of right now, a couple of weeks ago it was different. But if you look at it right now, polls are tightening. Trump's executive order is dramatically popular. It's actually the most popular thing he's done in the last couple of weeks, vis-a-vis inaction by Congress. So you think about all this, you're like, wow, this thing is not nearly, in the bag for the Biden campaign the way that they and the media are kind of strutting about. I mean, we have a Reuters poll kind of to that effect, which is bolstering their confidence. Let's throw that up there on the screen. It says 46% of adults would vote for Biden, but 38% would vote for Trump. But again, you have to filter it through this analysis here, which is that it's not the race that the media or that top line polls would have you believe.
It is not. And one of the things, that I want to be clear about is within this analysis, Nate says that part of why Trump has as high odds as he has, given the fact that there is a pretty significant polling disparity between the two, is just because of the mass amount of uncertainty.
Yeah,
I mean, the fact that there's so much distance still to Election Day, even though, the timeline is actually condensed from what it normally is, but there's still a good amount of time here. But also just the level of insanity and chaos that we are witnessing on a near daily basis in our country means that you have to say Trump's still got a shot at this thing. Right. And I'm going to talk in my radar today about how I'm having a lot of 2016 deja vu with the whole Biden strategy, their approach. And so, look, we're at the height of this pandemic, right? Huge numbers of people still dying. Schools can't reopen. Sports are getting canceled. Life is not going well in America. And Trump is obviously the president at the helm of all of that. The fact that he's still in range, that he still has the same odds of winning this time as he did in 2016, with a lot of days and a lot of uncertainty to come, should make Democrats really, really nervous. But I don't see them adjusting their strategy whatsoever.
No, they don't. I mean, we have the announcement from Joe Biden talking with Kamala Harris yesterday, basically, acting like it's all in the bag and very much, like you said, like a Hillary 2.0 type rollout, just like we saw with Tim Kaine. Let's take a listen.
My fellow Americans, now let me introduce to you, for the first time, your next Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. Kamala, the floor is yours.
It's really interesting because Kamala is meant to sort of square the circle of being exciting while also being very ideologically predictable, right? So Tim Kaine, very similar ideologically, although I would actually say, having lived in Virginia with him as governor, that he was somewhat of a more principled and consistent politician than Kamala has been, but similar ideologically. So how are we going to gin up the excitement? Well, if we have a historic, trailblazing candidate, they think that will be enough to gin up excitement among the voter groups that they need. Unfortunately, there isn't much evidence of that. If you look at how she performed in the primary campaign, look, Kamala's base was the affluent white suburbanites who are already going in droves to Biden's campaign, who are already definitely going to vote. The people who are most committed to Kamala Harris, like the K-Hive online, they are 1,000% already on board for Joe Biden. So it's hard to see how this really brings anything to the table. And so I actually see it as very similar to the Tim Kaine pick in that it is basically a screw you to the left of the party.
Yeah, and it's kind of amazing. She was polling at 3% before she dropped out. 3%. Remember, after she was like, I'm a top tier candidate and all that other nonsense that we covered here so often. And the thesis of the Biden campaign here, I just think couldn't be more wrong. Not going to excite young people, right? Not going to excite younger people of color in particular, who are all the ones who voted for Sanders and who don't have anything ideologically similar here with Kamala Harris. And I think that's the real issue.
And some are actually offended.
Yeah.
That you would think that, you could just take someone who has a trailblazing identity, but who has throughout their career stood against certainly many of the principles of the protest movement that has been front and center in American politics, that you would pick someone who was on the other side of that debate and think that that was going to be exciting. I think, look, I don't even know if they believe that, but if they do, they really misunderstand younger generations.
Yeah, they have another thing coming. And look, you want to know what Kamala thinks about you if you're a young voter? She told us already. Let's take a listen.
What else do we know about this population, 18 through 24? They are stupid. That is why we put them in dormitories. And they have a resident assistant. They make really bad decisions.
Wow.
Got it. Okay. So, look, it was a couple years ago, obviously slightly facetious, but this is a pretty revealing, kind of elitism whenever it comes to that. And
it's elitism on two levels, because it's number one, like contempt for younger people who actually, we have seen are way more engaged with policy and the issues that are going to impact them and their lives frequently than older generations, number one. Number two, an assumption that everyone who's 18 to 24 is in college.
Yeah,
how about that elitism as well?
Right, yeah. It's like, actually, most of them don't go to college and are destitute right now. They're the ones who actually need government assistance more than anybody, and the ones who are in college are saddled up with student debt and have zero prospects, for the next couple of years. Not necessarily the best strategy. So you have somebody who doesn't align with them on the issues. You have somebody who openly holds them in contempt. Does that sound like somebody who could energize you? And I think the reason that we're focusing in on this is because, look, the model, 72%. That's a pretty good chance. She, if
you would rather be Biden than Trump today.
Yeah,
no doubt about it.
Rather be Biden than Trump today. But let's say it didn't work out like it didn't work out for Hillary. What are the reasons? It's going to be for the exact same reasons. Don't excite younger people who came out for Barack Obama in droves. Don't necessarily excite any progressive leftists who were part of that coalition. And if anything, even more ascendant today than they were with Obama at the time in 2008. And so if you have all of that, plus, you have to hope that you're making all of these inroads with upper middle class white suburbanites, many who voted for Trump, and with white working class voters, and many voters who voted for Trump and might sit home at this time. Why would you bet on that? That's what happened to Hillary. And so they're just recreating the same strategy. And, I think people are starting to see through it at this point. The Kamala pick has really solidified people to say, whoa, this really couldn't work out.
Well, on the other hand, right, because I go back and forth in my mind because I really do see a lot of echoes of Hillary and the arrogance of that campaign, the assumption they don't need to do anything to win over the left, that either they have to fall in line or they really don't care. Like, we won the primary without you. We're going to snub AOC at the convention. We're not going to put Andrew Yang on the stage. We're going to, keep TYT from getting press credentials. We're just going to, blatantly stuff the left. And we really don't care what you think about it, because we don't need you. We got our white suburbanites. But on the other hand, the Trump campaign has done such a bad job. And Dr. Cornell West actually pointed out, explained to them in what is always, his commentary is always memorable and insightful, that Kamala Harris is not a radical. So if you're going to go after her, maybe pick a different line of attack. Let's take a listen.
When Biden and Harris get in there, if they still tied to Wall Street, still tied to the militarism, Africa, if they still tied to not dealing with quality public education, if they're still tied to their same old neoliberal elites, then we're just going to have another slow disaster rather than a quick catastrophe. With Trump, you got a quick catastrophe. He's got to go. That's why I myself, even as a radical, and I just want Trump people to know, I'm a radical. My dear sister, Harris is not a radical. She is she's a centrist and a moderate. I love the sister. She's my AKA sister and everything. But at the same time, I recognize that when it comes to serious class struggles that are going on, the class war of the bosses against workers. She hasn't always been on the side of the workers. Neither has Biden.
Yeah. Hey, look, that's the tactic I would take. That's what my entire radar is about today. So, I mean, I take your point, Dr. West. I hope the Trump campaign is listening. Yeah. Maybe they'll listen to me. I don't know. Probably not, given my track record so far.
I mean, for the left, he makes what is the best case for Joe Biden. It's like, he's on it. He's like, it's going to be a slow-moving disaster. It's hardly a stirring call to arms to back up, Joe and Kamala. But he's like, Trump is an instant catastrophe. They're a slow-moving disaster. So ultimately, I'm going to vote for him. But yeah, I mean, look, most people look at Kamala in a much more similar way to what Dr. West is saying. They don't see her as a radical, and they don't see her as a leftist. And so that's why, look, I guess what I would say ultimately is this. For the Trump campaign, this race is still eminently winnable.
Yes.
Biden and Harris have kept it so. I mean, he has made decisions and kept himself so low profile and run such an unimpressive race and done so little to reach out to the coalitions that he needs to, that he is certainly beatable. But they need to change strategies and actually, and get their act together economically and those things as well. But what they're doing right now is not going to work.
That's what I think the main point is that as it stands today, the Trump campaign strategy is absolutely, in my view, doomed to failure. But I think this is a very winnable race. And at the same time, we have, look, can't mislead anybody, which is that it's not necessarily in the bag for Trump either, right? Even if he were to change course because of how the record and coronavirus has gone so far for the last 5 months. And I thought that, look, I'm no Kamala Harris fan, but there was a portion of her speech where she talks about the economy. And I think that that is going to be the most potent weapon against the president, which is the idea. It's like, hey, you dithered on this, or hey, why didn't you take more action in order to stop people from being unemployed? And of course, Congress has the blame and all that. But in this country, the leader gets the blame in most
Well, and he deserves a good bit of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's take a listen to what Kamala had to say.
Trump is also the reason millions of Americans are now unemployed. He inherited the longest economic expansion in history from Barack Obama and Joe Biden. And then, like everything else he inherited, he ran it straight into the ground. Because of Trump's failures of leadership, our economy has taken one of the biggest hits out of all the major industrialized nations, with an unemployment rate that has tripled as of today.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty devastating attack. Now, look, she was also the person, as I pointed out on my radar today, who proposed less direct cash payments to Americans than Mitt Romney did in the early months.
Well, although
but
now...
people aren't going to remember that.
And now she's actually signed on to a bill, along with some other true progressives, that would provide $2,000 direct payments, including, I believe, retroactively, of course. Yeah. In a sign of things to come, the Biden campaign doesn't say whether Joe supports that. And we all know, how strong Kamala's commitment to these things are.
And we know her record of signing on to bills, which she, of course, means.
Right, obviously. She always follows through. Just look at her record on Medicare for All. But your point stands. Yeah. They have a much better bead on the correct line of attack against Trump. What they do not have, and again, very reminiscent of 2016, is their own positive affirmative case. But they are, so far, Trump doesn't have a positive affirmative case or the right attack on Kamala and Joe. So, look, this thing is still very much up in the air. Nothing is said and done yet. And at this point, it seems to me that both sides are doing certain things to try to lose. We're going to tell you what's on our radars. That's next.